What's up, y'all? TBrown31 here, back with JaboctheGreat. Once again, we have another episode of The Last Word. Today, we got our picks for this weekend, NFL week number 2. Got 5 games for y'all, starting with tonight, Thursday Night Football debut on Amazon Prime. Bills and the Dolphins. Obviously, this is seems like it's always a pretty early season matchup that we get between these two teams. I was thinking the Dolphins were a little bit better in this series, but Bills are pretty much dominated outside of that 2022 game. And we're going to split on this one. I'm picking the Bills. J-Box going with the Dolphins. I'll tell you in just a second. For me, I don't know. I think most people consider the Bills overall better just based on recent history, but I think it's the fact that last week they were down to the Cardinals and Josh Allen, he did his thing. The guys that they brought in, Keon Coleman, Shakir's been there. You know, Mac Hollins, he came in with a touchdown. Like they at least did what they had to do to come out with that dub last week against the Cardinals team that's we're not going to really consider them all too great yet. Got some young pieces, but not an amazing team by any means. But the Bills are able to come out with that victory. And it's really just the fact that the Bills, for the most part, seem to just dominate the Dolphins. Even going back to like the playoffs. I mean, they've been pretty successful against them in recent memory. So I'm sticking with Buffalo. Obviously, you have the Dolphins. They got a lot of talent over there. There's Tyreek, Jalen Waddle on that offense. So I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up like 2022, where the Dolphins end up winning this one. Close game at the end, but I'm going for Buffalo.
Yeah, the Bills have dominated the Dolphins for the last 13 games ish. Probably before that too. And it is just like it sometimes doesn't matter like how good the Dolphins are. And so this pick is just kind of like I think this early game in the series for them as always happens. And this is the one that the Dolphins got before was the early one. So I'm gonna have to go that taking the early game here in Miami that they're gonna be able to handle this one. And both of these teams actually really impressed me in week one. The Dolphins were close to being on the most disappointing video to get shut out by the Jaguars. And I don't think the Jaguars are a bad team. Maybe a little better than the Cardinals right now, but the Cardinals are a team that impressed me as well. I mean, we talked about that in some of our recent videos. So I think that the Bills and Dolphins both really impressed me last week with their ability to come back, both down from like 14, 17-ish point deficits, both come back. Dolphins ended the last season pretty high. I think number one on the passing rating for the NFL. They started it right back off, got right back to it, first on passing again. I think that just this early game, that they're going to be able to come together with that passing offense and eke out a victory. I do think that it's going to be like a 26-24 kind of like weird, close score. I don't expect like a blowout. If it's a blowout, I will concede that it would probably be the Bills blowing out the Dolphins. It never seems to go the other way. But I think it'll be a good battle. I trust in Tua and Tyreek. And the rushing offense is going to be rough with no Mostert. I think HN is going to be out there. But Dolphins looking a little weird here. But I think that, history is against the Dolphins. And maybe this time they can make a little bit of a dent and Josh Allen's record against Miami. So moving into our next pick, we have the Saints at the Cowboys. Saints put on a clinic last week against the Carolina Panthers. As much as I hate what I had to watch, they did look good. And the Cowboys put on a show against the Browns and surprised everyone because they were the underdogs there. And we're actually going to split again. This one is, for me, I'm going to take the Cowboys. So Cowboys offense, surprisingly, is actually only ranked like 24th after last week. The defense is really good. Saints are actually higher in both rankings after week one, but again, they played the Panthers, and I don't think that the Saints are bad. So I'll pivot here to kind of build up why I think the Cowboys will win because the Saints did really really good against the Panthers, but I think they're still a good team in there that could beat this Cowboys team. I do think that this Cowboys defense is going to be a little bit more challenging to the Saints offense than the Panthers defense was. Maybe they'll be able to catch them a little flat-footed. I think this offense is certainly a little more dynamic, a little tougher to guard. I think Dak, might not be. I mean, he was almost an MVP candidate, for the past few years. Bryce Young, not quite there. And I think Dak's going to be a little bit more of a problem for the Saints defense. I do think that he has an issue with pressure, and so if Cam Jordan starts to get active, then that might be a big problem. But I think that the Cowboys are going to be able to stand tall on that defense. And the run game is certainly not what it was with Tony Pollard, but Zeke looked good last week. If Dak and CD can get a better connection, that would certainly help because that was not super great last week. But he had Brandon Cooks, and they've been really good at just getting into field goal range and letting Brandon Aubrey have it. Which similarly, the Saints were getting in field goal range and letting Bailey Groupie do it. But I'm gonna go with the Cowboys in this one. I think it's gonna be. I don't think the Saints are putting up 47 again. I don't think the Cowboys are going to be quite in that range. I think we might get like a 35-28, 33, 28 kind of game. I'll take the Cowboys in favor of this one. Mostly, defense and some kind of offensive breakthroughs. We might get some defensive scores. This one should be a fun defensive battle, though, I think. And I'll let you explain why you're going with our big rival.
Yeah, begrudgingly here, and it's not even about the Cowboys, too much. Last week Cowboys got a great win, but it wasn't like, offensively it wasn't super impressive. I mean, it's just the first week of the season, so I'm not gonna go crazy. They still are having to deal with, placing weapons on the east side of the ball. Um, and like you said, Zeke, you would think it'll start to pick up a little bit more. Like Zeke is obviously not 2016, 2017, 2018 Zeke even. But I think it will pick up a little bit more. But just based off the last game, discount the fact that they were playing the Panthers. I still think the Saints offense has more firepower right now. And as long as they don't let, Micah Parsons, Lawrence, even Eric Kendricks, he came in, he got in some big plays last week. As long as they don't let that defense run rush out over that offensive line, like I think the Saints will probably pull out a close one. I think on the other side, that should be in the opposite direction here with the score. I think it'll be 20-17, so much lower scoring. I don't anticipate this being high scoring, throw it all over the field kind of game. I think this will be lower scoring. Definitely going to be some good defense played out there, but I think at the end of the day, more firepower for the Saints. They'll get the win. I'm moving to a game I think that will be a little bit more high powered. Buccaneers and the Lions. Another playoff rematch for the Lions. They just beat the Rams last week, who they played in the first round. And now we have the Bucks. We're both actually going to take the Bucks. So both taking, at least in my situation, I'm taking two of our divisional rivals here. But
Yeah.
look, I told you this before the video. I don't have too much hatred towards the Bucks. I mean, even as a Panther fan, we suck right now. I can admit that, like we're garbage. But for most of our lives, like collectively, the Buccaneers have kind of been irrelevant. Like they missed the playoffs from like 2008 to like 2019 before Brady got there, and they've had this resurgence now the past few years. And with how they played last week against Washington, who obviously not great, but they're okay out there with rookie quarterback and James Daniels. Like I'm really impressed with how the Bucks have been playing. Like they lost Tom Brady, obviously, retirement. Even that last year, they weren't really that good overall. But Baker, he's had a resurgence down there in Tampa. And for me, Detroit played that game last week just a little bit too close. So for me, I think it's going to probably come out 30-27 Tampa Bay.
Yeah, this one I will go with our rival here, but like I think you hit the nail on the head. This one doesn't feel as impactful to choose the rival since I don't know. I don't have a lot of beef with the Buccaneers. I mean, they're in our division, but they weren't really that big of a problem. And I kind of knew when Brady came down there that it wasn't going to be like a 20-year dominance. I think he was going to show up, get his, and get out, and he did.
Yeah.
I respect that. So, um, but yeah, I think the Buccaneers handled business against Washington, and Washington showed some flair. They showed that they're a good young team. Jaden Daniels had a good debut over there in the Capitol, and the Buccaneers were able to come out and handle business. I mean, Baker was on fire. He was the highest rated quarterback last week by most standards. I don't know. I don't think by passing yards, but I think his passer rating was really good. He was the highest scoring fantasy quarterback, which doesn't mean that much all the time, but for a guy who's not that big of a runner to be the highest scoring fantasy quarterback of the week is kind of impressive. Um, so things like that are pretty big. And I do think that this is really, I think that both of these teams are good. And I think that this really comes down to the way the Lions handled the end of that game against the Rams. I mean, they came out, Looked like they wanted it. Looked like they were ready to win. I know they're a gritty team, and they did win. But that second half was not good. And I do think that this Buccaneers team, at least the way they played against Washington, maybe, I don't think you're going to be able to put them in as much of a hole as the Lions put the Rams in. And I think that, if the Lions decide that they want to take a half off, I think it's over. I think the Buccaneers are going to, stay pretty locked in and take care of it. I think Baker Mayfield, Rashad White, Mike Evans, inevitable, and Chris Godwin all were pretty good last week. Their defense was decently kind of locked down. I mean, they won like 37-20, so they allowed 20, but it didn't really matter. So I also agree. I think that like a 27 to like 35. I don't know if the Bucks are going to push 40 again, but 30 to 27. Maybe 30 to 21, somewhere around that. I think we'll get a pretty. I think these teams are going to score touchdowns. It's going to be fun. The Lions might need to get Amon-Ra St. Brown a little more active. Their run game was great though. They had that going pretty well. So I think that this will be a fun one. I'm certainly excited for this game, and I don't feel super unconfident to pick the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers can come in and handle business again, maybe kind of shock the world against a Lions team that has been on fire for the past 2 years. Moving from there, we're going to go to a big one, the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Kansas City Chiefs. This one is funny. It would feel like it would be a team, another matchup. Everyone we've done so far has been teams that are 1-0. You would think that this one would be the same, but the Bengals, 30th ranked offense, 30th ranked in rushing, 21st in passing, did not do very well at all against the Patriots. They lost 16-10. We talked about that. We could have put that in our most disappointing losses, but we were favorable to the Patriots, put it in our most impressive wins. We're not going to split on this. We're going to take the Chiefs. Now, Joe Burrow is actually really good against Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. I'm sure you've seen that graphic all week. He's got a winning record against those two guys. But this ain't the same Bengals team, and I just don't really trust them. The Chiefs do have at the moment, since they've started with the Ravens, the 32nd ranked defense in the league, which is last. So not an amazing look on that one. However, their offense was much more on fire than the Bengals offense. They won their game against the Ravens. So you have a game where you come out and people say you've got the worst, or you statistically do have the worst ranked defense in the league after week one, but you also have a win. You beat one of the best offenses in the league. Patrick Mahomes and Xavier Worthy immediately had a good connection. Travis Kelce didn't get as involved, but that was fine. Isaiah Pacheco was pretty good. So yeah, I think that this one just feels like the Chiefs are going to keep rolling. The Bengals have that early season stutter every year, and they just weren't that good against the Patriots. And I think despite the whole Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes thing, the Chiefs are a little more locked in and have got kind of their stuff together and moving very well. And the Bengals might still be trying to get that machine to fully activate here. And I think that this is just a bad matchup for week 2 in a season where you already dropped the ball and lost to the Patriots in week 1. This is not the week you want next to try to bounce back. That's not going to go well for the Bengals. I would take the Chiefs. I don't want to be overreactive to the Patriots performance. I know this defense is not as good as the Patriots defense, but I would say the Chiefs 28 to 17, something like that.
Yeah, you were actually a point off what I was going to say. I was going to go 27-17 Chiefs. Yeah, I'm not going to go crazy. You can give the Patriots credit for a good win. Gerard Mayo's first game as head coach over there with Jacoby Brissett as quarterback. You can give them credit for the win while also saying, the Bengals didn't play their absolute best game. T. Higgins was out. I made the joke. Jamar Chase had contractitis, but he did play. It's kind of funny how you mentioned his record, Joe Burrow's against Mahomes. It's kind of switched a little bit in this rivalry. They've played 5 times since January 22. They played a couple times, late in each season. Then they played obviously twice in the AFC Championship game. They split those. Chiefs have won the last 2. And I think this won't be any different. Again, I'm not overreacting, but I mean, we can only take what, we've only seen when we could play. We can go with that. So not super impressed by what the Bengals did last week. And I said it, we were talking in one of our last videos earlier this week. If we had picked the Ravens Chiefs games, I would have picked the Ravens to win. So the Chiefs come out and they get that win over the Ravens. They impressed me even more because I really wasn't sure, what the Chiefs were going to look like. I know they just won a Super Bowl. They got better, but at some point it is going to get hard for him to keep being this great. I do think it continues in this one. Um, Bengals, they might start 0-2. The season will be over if they do. But they definitely, depending on how they play in this one, they're going to have to reevaluate what they're doing so far. And I know T. Higgins not being there, it hurts, but still. And then our last game, that'll be Sunday Night Football. Chicago and Houston. We're both going to take the Texans in this one. Again, this is kind of a situation where we saw one team get a good win last week, and the other team an okay win. Chicago, look, it's not an overreaction again here to what they looked like last week. They did come out with a dub, but you're not going to get these defensive special teams touchdowns every week like that. The offense is going to have to do something. And Ronald Dunze, you got Keenan Allen, both of them are questionable. Obviously, you still got a couple days, so we're not going to know exactly if they're going to play or not. But assuming that they can, or if they're limited, Bears offense is obviously going to be weakened to say the least. So, obviously, CJ Stroud, he's going to be in his. Everybody's predicting he might be an MVP candidate this year, which was fair. Houston, look, they had some turnovers last week that got called back because of penalties. Maybe the game
Yeah.
could have gone differently against Indianapolis, but look, I think right now it's still obvious Houston's a better team. So I would go with them probably in a similar score. I'd say 24-14.
Yeah, I got CJ Stroud on my fantasy team, and watching him throw those picks, I was like, "You got to be kidding me, man!" And then they were a little bit of a tomfoolery pick. The penalties certainly saved the Texans and me. The Texans played well either way, though. I mentioned this briefly when we talked about the loss of Joe Mixon for the Bengals in one of our last videos, that he had a good debut over there in Houston. Houston has the number one ranked rushing team right now, and they played a really gritty game against the Colts. I mean, the Colts fought. They survived that 60-yard through the air bomb by Anthony Richardson, which is maybe the best play of the season so far, and could hold up for the while. I mean, that is I think the longest in air pass recorded, and the Texans just kind of took that in stride and got the win. In the not to keep bringing up all the rankings, but we did just talk about the Chiefs having the dead last defense, and we're going to take them and win on that one. The Bears had a great defensive day. They were eighth. I mean, they did an amazing job forcing those special teams mess ups and getting the turnovers. The Titans coach after the game said that maybe if we just punted on 1st and 10 every drive we would have won, which is diabolical. You choose that option on like Madden and you lose team chemistry for sure. But sometimes you just fed up. I guess week one fed up is a crazy place to be. But I guess I get it. The Bears otherwise though dead last on offense, dead last in passing. I have nothing against Caleb Williams. I hope to see him do well. He did not do well last week against the Titans. And the Texans are another kind of tough defense to go up against. I mean, Anthony Richardson and the Colts definitely made it not look that way on some plays, but some of it was just like miracle NFL plays, such as the 60-yard bomb. So I think the Texans are a little more put together here. I think their offense is really good, and I do think they benefited from those penalties, calling those picks back. And this Bears defense could certainly force some turnovers. So this could swing a little bit, but I think the Texans are going to be able to come out on this one with a good week 2 win. I guess a really good defense, and I think Caleb Williams will probably look a little better, kind of getting his feet together. And the Texans defense is certainly good. It might not be quite up to where the Titans defense is. I think they're kind of close to each other. But I do think the Texans are going to be able to kind of take care of business here with C.J. Stroud and that offense staying on fire. Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon mixed in very well in that new system. So I would take this probably like a 24 to like 17. I think that seems pretty fair to the Texans here.